We all are only 1 degree removed from knowing someone who is being impacted by workplace violence or some form of online exploitation. This issue filters into employee wellness, impacting engagement at work. Let's bridge this gap by bringing awareness and education to these pressing issues and shield the vulnerable.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Shield the Vulnerable, Untold Stories. I have a super special guest with us here today, Cheryl Greenfield. I've known Cheryl for a couple years now. She is an empowerment mindset coach who specializes in trauma. She authored a journal, Becoming Me. She runs a TV program that is on Win-Win for Women. The TV show is called Empowered by Trauma. It's a 30-minute educational TV series. It's available on YouTube, Fire TV, Apple TV, and Roku. But on top of all of that, Cheryl, you love to travel. You can tap dance. You love to box. That's what you do to keep fit and keep in shape. And you were a sexual trauma nurse for over 14 years. But on top of that, you have your own story of childhood sexual trauma. And you're here today to talk about that and your own journey in finding empowerment through all of these experiences and how you use that to help others and show them that they can do the same. So, Cheryl, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Dave. Pleasure to be here. Very excited.
Yeah. You do some amazing work. And let's kick this off here, right? That I know you and I have had a lot of in-depth discussions over time about what it is that that you have faced in your childhood and how you've used it with what you do now and through your years of working as a sexual trauma nurse. But there's a common belief, and it's a misconception, that all victims of trauma, sexual trauma or other forms of trauma, need to continue living their life as a victim. And we know that's not true. So what is the most surprising thing that came out of everything when you came out and told people your story?
I love this question because this was super surprising to me. I was not prepared for what happened, and it really blindsided me, to be honest. When I came out with my story, I was re-victimized by family, friends, the public, and it was, I should have reported it, and therefore I didn't. I must have liked it. And that was a very common thread said to me. People also in the timeline, they decided that I most likely was the first victim of many. And then there was a story that people were giving to me like, gosh, don't you feel guilty? You could have saved all of this from happening. Right. And that's what happened.
So let's kind of break this down here a little bit, first of all. So this happened when you were a child, and it was at the hands of a family member, your uncle.
Yes.
Right? Somebody who was well known in your community. Mm-hmm. He was active in the military. The Army?
He was in the Army. Yeah, he was military, and he was very active in the community. He ran business, and he ran on our local emergency squad. So pretty much everybody knew him. It's a small town.
Yeah. Everybody knew him. Everybody liked him?
Yep. In the community, like in the social aspect, and he was sort of the life of the party, if you will.
Yeah.
Yep. And wow. So, and he was very manipulative.
Right.
And he manipulated me and others into silence. And he was very good at it, very threatening. Right. And so that is why people were silent about this. At the time, I didn't know there were other victims. I thought it was just me my whole life.
Yeah. So let's kind of walk through this a little bit, from... We're going to maybe kind of work a little bit in reverse here. So, this happens to you, you go through your early adulthood life, you get educated, and I know there's a lot there for us to uncover with that and what you went through, but there's a pivotal point in your time in your life where you're like, I need to come out about this. I need to tell other people. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that your thought process going into that, like many others who finally report it, say, I'm going to get a lot of support from people. People are going to be there to pick me back up. But you were initially faced with the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's why I felt blindsided by it. I really felt people would be there and understand. And even my fiance at the time was one of those people and did
What do you
not
think causes
support.
that? What do you think causes that reaction from people to, you got you must have liked it. You brought this on yourself. Like there's all those different reactions and statements that people make, people that you think are going to be the ones that support you the most. What causes that
Right.
reaction from people?
Well, I think a couple things. One, it's a thought habit. It's how people have been raised, and through the media, through families, through ideas that have been passed down. For women, if you dress provocatively, you probably caused that, right? If you, it just must be a way for them to explain it. And then I think in situations where this comes out and you're already in a relationship, they think that you're the problem because you lied to them. That was what was presented to me. I lied to them. I didn't lie to anybody. I told nobody.
Right.
I just kept it a secret because there was threats of my life and family members' lives if I ever came out. So, and I didn't take it lightly coming out because of that. But
Right.
I knew I had to in this situation.
So when you come out and you're met with that, what's that turning point? Because other people are probably seeing how people are reacting to you or responding to you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're either, they're saying you've been lying to us or all of these other things. And maybe there's people that didn't believe you that this happened. Who knows?
Yep. Yeah, there was that too.
What was that change where other people started to come forward?
I think other people started to come forward because they have been holding it a long time too. And I was the first one that stepped up and made the police report. And then it was a second one and a third one. And I think once the other victims saw people were stepping forward, they came forward to support because they saw what was happening. They saw that the support wasn't there for the public and the people surrounding them. And the person, it was actually my cousin's daughter that came forth first. And this was very fresh and very new that this had happened to her. And we felt she was going to need the support, especially once we saw what happened to me, like like the non-belief or the blaming or the re-victimization. So I think that's why everyone then really started coming forward. And we had 22 women file police reports and stand in support. Yeah.
That's wild. And the people who were the disbelievers or your toughest critics when you first came out, did they ever change tune? Did they come on side? Were any of those people victims themselves?
Well, that's the question, that I had with a lot of people that said this, were they also victims, especially some of the family? I would say 3/4 of the people turned the table and realized, okay, this is bigger than just two people coming out, right? This is much larger, and it's grown from there. But some people, they still stood in their paradigm that, no, this is you lied to me. I'm no longer with my fiance. And there's some people that still feel like for some reason I was a cause of it. And that's okay. I mean, I've learned to deal with that. People can have their own opinions. I know what happened. I know in my heart what happened. And it is what it is. You can't change everyone. But it amazes me that some people still hold that.
And so for anybody here who's listening to this podcast, I want you to hang in there till the very end, because you're going to see how this comes full circle, how Cheryl now uses what happened to her, for her, and helps others get through that. Because I don't want anybody at this point in time going, see, That's why I never reported this. That's why I'm still not going to
Mm-hmm.
report this, because I fear that's going to happen. So hang in there if you or somebody even has been a victim of this, because this is all going to come out. But Cheryl, I want to dive in now, because with all of this happening and before you ever telling a soul, you actually went on to become a sexual trauma nurse yourself and
Mm-hmm.
working with
Mm-hmm.
other people who had forms of trauma. Let's go back even just a little bit before that, right? I know that the violence against you stopped when you were around, I think, 18 years old,
Right. I went to
right?
college. I left the city.
And so what happens? What's going through you? That's a wave of emotions at this time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, to be honest, I thought it would be something to set me free, right? I thought that I'll get away, I'll go to college, and I'll do great. I'll just walk away from all of this and life will move on. But unfortunately, I had a lot upstairs in my mind that I hadn't dealt with. And I was not very good at college. I um, fell into addiction through drugs and alcohol because I was trying to silence the noise, right?
Yeah.
And because still couldn't talk about it to anybody, because if he found out, people's lives were at risk. And I believed that. And
It's
so,
part of the threats and the manipulation that somebody who
yes.
is harming you leaves you with.
Right. And so even though I removed myself from the situation, I wasn't being traumatized physically at that moment, the emotional trauma continued within. And
Absolutely.
I had to struggle through a lot of things. I had some great friends that didn't know what was happening, but knew like one day to get me to a hospital before I died. And so I learned to just sort of live with it with me, but I just destroyed my health from it. And I had a lot of mental health issues dealing with it, but I got through it, right? I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, in front of the other, and I just carried it with me. But life was not good. I was not happy.
Right.
I was.
And so you go on to, you become a nurse. What led
Mhm,
you? So you said you weren't happy. Is that something that
mhm.
carried through you throughout your entire professional career?
Pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much
Even
my
when you're
whole
working
life.
as a trauma nurse,
Yeah, my
right?
whole life. I did the trauma and and now I can look back and say I know why I did the trauma because it's so busy you can't think, right?
Right.
You can't think about your own issues. You're worried
You
about
don't have time to
the
stop.
next moment, right? You keep yourself busy. And that's something that I always fell into because I found if I kept myself busy, I didn't have to think about what was going on up here, right? I didn't have to think about what was going on in my mind about the trauma I endured.
But
I was going to help others.
what about when that busyness ended, right? You do a 12-hour shift, a lot of nurses do, give or
Hmm.
take, and you've been dealing with everybody else's trauma.
Hmm.
And now
Well,
it's time to go home, and it's silence. It's radio silence. It's the drive home. It's the,
mhm,
whatever it may be, right?
right.
How does it come back, or were you able to, did you throw up blockers at that time?
I did a little of both. Sometimes I couldn't block it out, and so then you find ways to block it out. You become busy when you go home, and I had a child at one point, so that kept me busy when I wasn't at the job busy. But then sometimes alcohol, I would drink a lot and
Yeah.
and try to block it out. But sometimes I would just literally put up blockers and just totally encapsulated away. I used to say that my heart, I cocooned my heart and then I wrapped steel around it to protect it. Like I wouldn't let anybody in. That's how encapsulated it was. I had to keep it under lock and key,
Yeah.
truly.
Well, and that's a result of suppressing, right? When you just
Yes.
stuff everything down, everything down. And the best analogy I can give to anybody who's going through any form of trauma is, picture in your head, you've got this chest, right, that you put
Hmm.
stuff into. Eventually, you can't close that lid, right? The first couple things that go in
Hmm.
there, yep, you can close the lid, right? We're good. We close the lid. We close the lid. Eventually, that lid doesn't close, but things keep piling up. Eventually,
Hmm.
things start to fall out, right? And
Yep.
that's where that breaking point, if you will, comes.
Hmm.
So It's interesting in the role that you were playing because you're working in a fast-paced environment. You're working in trauma, but you're too busy with everybody else's trauma to think about or deal with your own, but you found ways to suppress it in other ways, right? And what we talk with organizations that we work with about is that, look, like a big thing, and people are going to hear this probably almost every podcast somewhere along the way, is we kind of have like a 1 degree rule that everybody is probably only 1 degree away from knowing somebody who has been impacted by some form of sexual trauma. That's how prevalent it is in our society. But people don't go around wearing a big sign or a big stamp on their forehead that says, I've been traumatized.
Right.
And so it starts to show up in other ways, right? It starts to show up with the way employee engagement, employee wellness. I had an amazing interview with a woman yesterday who runs an organization called Reframe Mental Health. And we talked about this, that it may not even be that they're actively disengaged at work or wellness until something happens, until they're in a boardroom and another figure comes in there, male or female, doesn't matter, and uses a tone of voice, or there's something else that causes that triggering to happen back, right? It's not that people sit there all day in this, state of disengagement because of this, but they're sitting there and there's something that can happen where they're triggered, or they have to go away on a business trip with a colleague and that person reminds them of somebody, right? Like there's so many things that other people we're not aware of, or that we don't think about. We're so busy, right? We've got a business to run. We got these other things to do, right? So how do you feel? How can somebody who's running an organization, maybe they're a human resource leader or they're another form of management, how can they begin to start to maybe recognize somebody who might be going through some form of trauma in their life?
Well, there's many things that you can watch if you pay attention to people, right? And is your employee isolating themselves away from people, right?
Yeah.
Do they get into the social situations? Like when I was in the corporate environment at one point, they had a lot of social things. I wouldn't go to them. I'd stay at my desk and work. That's one clue, right? Another clue is
would they go to other social things, or would you avoid all social things?
Pretty much all social things.
All social things?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people look at you though, and they just label you, well, you're an introvert.
Right. Yeah.
They don't know.
I did that because I didn't want to talk about myself, right? And in social situations, that tends to happen, and I have to keep quiet. So I would protect that. And I would not put myself in situations that I might have to talk. And so that's one thing. A thing that I would do personally, if I got uncomfortable in any situation, and if somebody raises their voice or like slams their hand on a table, that will trigger me in an instant. I will get up and go to the bathroom, and I won't come back for a long time.
Is that something that still lingers today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's still a mechanism for me to get myself together, right? I know it's a trigger now. There was a point in time I didn't understand that was a trigger. I would just run from things, like get away from it to a safe spot. I didn't understand it was a trigger until I learned about triggering. And so it's things like that. You have to watch people because they're not going to come up and tell you, I have a problem. Employers need to have programs, I feel, to allow someone who's having trauma release some of that while at work. If they have the EAP programs for counseling where they can do things privately, that's fantastic for people. But also, our company did this thing called Mindful Minute. I did every single one of those. They would take a mindful minute, and they wanted people to do it. So they said everybody needs to stop what they're doing and do this program. And they did like a 15-minute program 3 times a week.
Are these the mini mindsets?
These were the mini mindset things that they would do. And they would do a breathing practice. Sometimes they did some yoga stretching in the chair, things like that. But they had everyone do it. So it wasn't singling any one person out. So then everyone could do it. And you get the benefit of that. You don't want to talk about it. If you can participate in something like that at the workplace, you get the benefit of that to relax a little bit into the space and get back focused.
So you have these, you've just given some really good information there. You sit there and you do not include yourself in anything social, right? Or you're looking for clues that maybe that an employer, that a manager, at somebody can pick up on. Are you secretly hoping for somebody to come up to you and say, hey, is everything going okay for you right now? Something seems off. Are you hoping somebody, is it like one of those, like, I hope somebody asks me, but I hope they don't? Is it a tug of war? Are you looking for somebody just to pull this out of you?
Right. It is a tug of war. I will say that. Yes, there are times I wished that somebody would just pull this out of me and allow me to speak about it. Like, even if it was just privately and it never went anywhere else, at least I could speak to someone about it.
Yeah.
But it is a tug of war, because on the other side of that is, because I thought about that many times, going to talk to people. And then there's a tug of war. What if it gets out? And with my trauma, I was so threatened. And I don't want to go into all of that, but you just have to know it was severe threatening and what was said to me, and it scared me. And so and it's a constant tug of war. For 45 years, that was a constant tug of war. If I could just talk about this, if I could just talk about this. Even starting in college, I went to a counselor, but I was on my parents' insurance.
Right.
And so they would know I was going, and they would not see me private pay. So I walked out, because I can't have them know, because then they would ask questions, put them at risk.
Absolutely.
So it's things like that. So it's very hard if someone's holding that secret to get it out safely.
It is. And you're looking, right? You're overanalyzing, you're overthinking everything, right? You're like, oh, if I go, it's, this is private pay, or, it's all of these things that hold people back. When it comes to employers, and I love that you had the many mindsets and that everybody had to be involved with that. And one thing that we really talk about, right? And those things, I think that even for the people who are like, I don't want to do that, you have all your naysayers about it too. Deep down, I think everybody is facing something. And
absolutely.
I think a lot of people, and I've watched people through this. I watched it when I was working in law enforcement too. And, when we'd have a training day, like somebody would come in and involve this, and you'd see your people going, I don't want to do that. But you could tell, and I know that I had a couple guys who would pull me aside afterwards and be like, what'd you think of that? And I'm like, well, I do this stuff anyways on my own, so I'm fine doing it here. And you get some people kind of start to tiptoe, and you could tell that they wanted to come out with something or ask something. And we now help organizations, develop these conversations, these questions to ask, and say, like, it's okay to say to somebody, you look like you want to tell me something. You look like you have something to say. Is everything okay? Is everything going okay in your life? Or how are you feeling about things right now? Right. And you'd be surprised how many people start to come forward and actually give you something.
Yeah.
Right. Or there's the other way. And it's a cold read, right? Instead of asking, hey, Cheryl, how are you today? Right. I can be like, hey, Cheryl, you look a little sad today. Hey, Cheryl, you look really happy. Something must be going great in your life, right? And you might look at me and go, I look sad. No, I'm not sad. I'm really focused on something right now. But what people like about that is that you're paying attention to them. Because I know in this, hey, how are you? That's just a blanket question that we ask people. And before we're even done asking the question, our minds have gone off to thinking about what's for lunch, what's for my kids got soccer tonight, or all these other things. I'm not even actively listening to what it is that you're telling me. And so we as society go, well, I know somebody's going to ask me how I am. They don't really care how I am, right? But if I just walk up and say, Cheryl, you look like you're having a bit of a day right now. And you kind of stop and you're like, yeah, Dave, I am having a bit of a day right now. And it catches people off guard. And it causes the person saying it to have to stop and focus and listen to them. right?
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I would never, I would respond to how are you? And it was like, I'm fine.
That's what
That was my
people do.
answer. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what people do, right? I'm fine. And so then you're off the hook as the asker how they were, and they're off the hook because they just said they were fine, and it just separates at that point. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I really like that, asking a more direct question like, hey, you seem like you're
Well,
off today.
it's like a read on the person, right? And
Yeah.
for anybody who wants to, practice this, right? Like try it with your kids, right? The parent teenager, the parent youth thing is always, hey kiddo, how was your day at school? This is fine. What'd you do at school today? I forget. And then the
Mhm.
conversation's done, right?
Right.
Whereas you can go back, right, and say, hey, how was your day at school today? Or what'd you do at school today? I don't know. I forget. What'd you learn at school today? I don't know. I forget. And respond to them. You forget? Well, and they kind of start, and you can then look at them and go, it looks like you're maybe having a bit of a day, or you look really happy about something right now. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, today at lunchtime, right? And it gets kids to start opening up and communicating.
Mhm.
And so you start that kind of with a mirrored statement, right? What'd you do at school today? I forget. You forget? Well, yeah, I'm not quite sure what I did. You're not sure what you did? You look like it may have been a bit of a busy day. Oh my goodness, it was a crazy day. And then they start going through all of these things. And so, not promoting using your children as a testing ground, but if you get really good at those conversations with your kids and then you start to employ it in the workplace, right? And just approaching
Mhm.
people with that cold read and, you mirror back what they say to them, right? It can get people to stop and they start to open up more
Mhm.
and they start to have real conversations with you. Doesn't mean they're going to come in and, dump all this trauma on you or anything else, but it gets them showing that you care more about them. And that's a huge first step for organizations to start to
Mhm.
build that employee wellness and employee engagement, is to really show them that you care.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think people who have had trauma and who are carrying it in silence need to know that there are people who care, even if you don't come out. But if somebody asked me a question like that and I would answer that, I would know that they're caring about me. So I'd be much more likely to talk to them in the future if the opportunity arose then, as opposed to nobody around here cares about me. They don't even
The
listen to
trust
what I
starts to
say.
build.
Right. You have to build that trust. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It,
So you now take what your experiences and what's happened and you run Empowered by Trauma,
Mhm.
helping others who have trauma in their life use it for them, removing that victim label, removing the way they self-identify with that.
Mhm.
Tell me about that.
So my step into this came at a point in my life, this is a little deep. So I will say, if people are struggling with trauma right here, I just want you to know there's a national hotline in the US and Canada. You can dial 988 or text 988 and talk to anyone at any time. But when I was re-victimized, I stood in the throes of suicide to the point I made a plan, even. And we all know with suicide, if somebody makes a plan, they're usually pretty serious. And I was, because I just thought it would be easier just to tap out instead of dealing with all of this chatter about I must have liked it and all of that stuff, right? And but then I thought about my grandbaby, and so I didn't do it. And I started researching and I found the Pursuit Institute coaching program. And I decided one of their taglines is you're one thought away from changing your life. And so I actually almost chuckled at that. I'm like, yeah, right. That's kind of was my thought, but it made me pick up the phone and call and contact someone. And I had tried other things and had never worked. And I decided that the story was out now. It was time to figure this out, to move forward, because I didn't want to be this person for my grandkids, right? And so I threw myself fully into the program and I learned that I was identifying as a victim my whole life. I identified as a victim and I was carrying that into every relationship, every work site, everything that I was doing. I was coming from the victim standpoint. And so I did the work on myself. I've been doing this now for 4 years, the work. I will continue to do the work. But in 4 years, I have managed to change to the positive that I am not a survivor either, because I don't believe in just being a survivor because you're just getting by. I'm a thriver and I'm thriving now.
I love that. And having how you identify with it, right? Not a victim. I'm not a survivor. I'm a thriver. So how do you teach others to do the same thing? Right? Because there's no doubt there's going to be listeners, there's going to be people who are on that cusp of, I don't know what to do.
Right. Which is why I hired a coach. And my coach had a program that I worked through step by step. And I started doing the work every day. I started first becoming aware. What was I telling myself? Right. And then I would change that, what I was telling myself. And I just started through repetition, changing what I was saying to myself. And I started looking at myself and I started looking at what the trauma had created within me and learning how to release that and learning how to talk to myself and learning how to empower myself through this trauma, because I was going to use this trauma to make life better. And eventually what I did, I came up with the program Empowered by Trauma because I want others to know what to do, to empower themselves, because you can use that and empower yourself to help others. So that is what I have done. And I am on a mission to help as many people as I can. I know there are many people living in silence right now. The statistics are not accurate. I did a talk for human trafficking a while back. And when the talk was over, I stood for 2 hours in the same spot with a line of women. Me too. This happened to me too. I've never told anyone. This happened to me. This happened to me. And over and over and over. So I know there's many people out there in silence. And if you're one of those, reach out. Please reach out to me. I'm all over social media, or find a good coach, someone that you can trust, and work through this, because I never thought my life could be this amazing.
Yeah. And I don't want to throw, you took a different approach, and I'm not trying to throw rocks here at all of our medical or clinical therapists that are out there. You found this through coaching. That was your first time really stepping into the light and seeing a big change over doing traditional forms of therapy. What is the difference that you found between the two, or why do you think one worked for you over the other? And that what's led you now to doing this for other people, and which is amazing, because you're not only using your life experience, you're using your learned experience through working with your own coach, but you're using your professional experience as well as being a sexual trauma nurse. And so you understand as well the medical clinician side.
I do. And it wasn't that I didn't try counseling and trying therapists. And it didn't fit with me. What I felt happened every week, week in, week out, with there was probably 4 different times in my life I tried that. And every time it was like, I told my story. I never felt like I left with any tools. It's like, okay, now what? So if I go a week, I go back, we talk more about the story. And I just never got, and maybe they were there, maybe I couldn't see them, I don't know. But for me, it just never worked. It just never got me to a point where I felt like I was thriving. I never got to that. I would say maybe I was surviving through those points, right? And even when the story came out, they had to see a counselor. I felt the same thing. I felt like it was just they wanted to hear the story. And I didn't feel like I was getting any tools, right? And the difference, I think, with the coaching is there are specific tools to put in your toolbox that you can use every day. You learn how to become aware. You learn all about affirmations. You learn the laws of the universe that you can use just with the snap of a finger. Like if I'm sitting here with my inner critic downgrading myself, like, oh, you're so unworthy, you're stupid, you're this, you're that. Suddenly I can go, wait a minute. No. I'm not that. Law of polarity, there's an equal and opposite reaction to everything. So I say, no, I am worthy. I am smart. I am beautiful. I am loved. I can say all of those things to myself right then and there. I have the tools. And
Right.
even the journal that I used, all the journal prompts for a year, that is a tool where you can start looking at yourself using the laws of the universe, then reflecting on that. How
Yeah.
can I change? So that's how I see the difference.
I do love that. And I know that I've talked to many people who are like, some of that seems hokey, all these things, right? I want to bust this myth down real quick right now before we wrap this up, right?
Sure.
And I'm going to give this to a couple people to think about in a couple of different ways. One, you need to understand if you are beating yourself up every single day inside the voices in your head, right? And you are not living the life that you are living where you're completely fulfilled, satisfied, happy. You have to know if you reverse that, if you rewire your brain, rewire your thoughts, you can overcome it and you can change. Easy analogy to give. If you are somebody who has health issues, has mobility issues, is overweight, is lacking strength, is lacking, physical strength, and you go to the gym and you start doing yoga twice a week, Pilates once a week, lifting a few weights, walking on a treadmill, walking outside, getting active, your body goes through a change. And your mind is no different. You just have to train it. And you have to reprogram the belief system that you have about yourself. And that is exactly, I think, where Cheryl's coming from here, is saying that if we can, like you said, right, you had to program one thought away. And it's those thoughts that you changed to lead you to where you are now. So, Cheryl, where can somebody find you if they need your help?
I have empowered by trauma.now.site is my website. You can reach
what is
out.
Empowered by Trauma Now?
Empowered by trauma.now.site is my website.
Okay.
And then I'm on all social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. And then I have a Calendly link that people can find me over there. And that's calendly.com/Cheryl Greenfield 1961. And they can book a call.
Awesome. We'll be sure to link all of those up for everybody here. I just want to recap a few key things here for everybody, right? One, if you are feeling as though you are at a point where you're ready to talk to somebody, 988, Cheryl said, you can call, you can text. That gets the ball going. And I know from speaking to so many people who have had trauma in their life, myself included, who has gone through counseling after working years in emergency services, the hardest thing to do the first time is to pick up the phone and make that call. Once you do, though, it's a weight off your shoulders. You do not have to suffer in silence. You do not have to feel as though you're just surviving or live as a victim, right? And it doesn't have to be a long road to recovery. It doesn't have to be painful. You can be empowered by this. And I know it's so hard for people to understand that, how did this, changing from that mindset of this happened to me to it happened for me. But Cheryl, you are a walking testament of that, because you're using your trauma now to help others. And so this has happened for you because you're helping others overcome this. And for anybody out there, I know it's a heavy topic, but it's not something that you have to carry the burden of your whole life and keep hidden down. So Cheryl, thank you for the awareness that you create around these topics, for being that point of inspiration for so many men and women who are facing trauma in their lives, and helping them utilize that and become a thriver in life. For those listening, if you learned something today from this podcast, if there's any new insights, tell somebody about this podcast, share it with them, talk to them about it. Don't hesitate to look at people and just make that cold assessment and say, hey, you look like something's weighing heavy on your mind right now. And then listen. So Cheryl, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of this with us today.
Thanks so much, Dave.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, that is it. This has been another amazing episode of Shield the Vulnerable, Untold Stories. We will see you next time.